Welcome everyone, my name's John Meyer, and I'd like to introduce you to another edition of the AWS Blogger, where we continue our mini-series with mai-lan 𝗕𝗂𝗶, Global VP for AWS Block and Object Storage Services. Before I bring mai-lan on, just a friendly reminder that at the end of our mini-series, we're going to do a live Q&A session. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, click that notification, feel free to post your questions in the comments.
Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like and click subscribe.
All right, so it's time to bring on mai-lan. mai-lan, thank you and welcome.
Hi, John. Nice to be back.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
So let's get started right here. Thank you for joining me. In our last conversation, we had a chance to get to know you, the current pandemic, and obviously don't forget our pop quiz about the first AWS service. Which is always fun that I like to do. In fact, I think that's going to be a recurring theme here for all my podcasts, is to ask that one and combine the data, and maybe we might have to publish something. But in this episode, we're going to talk about data explosion, free from the box, and diverse workloads. So I'd like to jump right into it, if you don't mind, mai-lan.
Yeah, it sounds great.
All right, so you and I had a chance to talk probably a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about free from the box. Can you describe that more for us? Can you go into a little bit of detail? What is free from the box?
Free from the box really came from talking to a lot of our customers. Our customers were telling us that to them, they felt like they were just chained to this physical hardware appliance that they were using for data, and they were just stuck. They were stuck with an upgrade refresh cycle. They were stuck having to pay for the space and the power and all the data center costs that go with housing that whole data appliance. And they were stuck with all the work that you had to do to move data into the data appliance. And so there was this idea of being stuck with this box, this hardware appliance. But there was also this correlation between that hardware appliance and being stuck with their application as well, where the application that they were building for the data that was being stored in that hardware appliance. And those two things of the hardware appliance and the application being tied together to being stuck meant that every couple of years when they did a hardware refresh and they had to think about the data migration, they also had to think on the other side, if I'm going to try to bring that application forward, I have to go make some changes to the data. I have to change my data schema. I might have to upgrade my hardware appliance because the demand for my application is outgrowing the capability of my physical storage appliance. And so that concept of the evolution of the application was also stuck to whatever hardware appliance that customer was stuck with. And so you had this sort of whole environment that customers needed to get away from in order to deal, A, with the growth of the data, which everybody knows is at the heart of smart decision making, and the evolution of the application set. Because it's not just the analytics applications, it's the predictive machine learning of the future. It's all of the different applications that you don't even know you're going to build yet, that your business is going to need. And those applications are going to need to evolve independent of the growth of the data set. And you just can't do it when you're stuck to a hardware box.
And we talked in our last series, and it kind of reminded me of the traditional data center that I've worked in, and that, the storage aspect, everybody's thinking about, oh, this is my storage, and it's taken a while to do that. What you're really talking about is the limitations of storage that you have available to you and that you need to utilize, and you actually have to conform your data and your application to utilize that storage instead of just using it and letting your applications grow. Am I on point, or correct me?
Yeah, in fact, John, it's been really interesting working with so many of our customers where a lot of the modern data architecture is about the separation between storage and the application set. And so the key concepts there is that you have a shared data set And again, for S3, we're all about multi-use mixed data set where you have all kinds of data. It's a CSV file, it's a transaction log, it's click-through logs, it's Parquet files, it's anything you want it to be. And it's all in S3 as a shared data set. And then what you can do with your application set is that in that shared data set, you can build multiple different applications, all of which may do one or two things really well, all using different parts of the shared data set, which has all of its access controlled by policy. And so this new modern data architecture is really at the heart of what people are building today, because they want that evolution and they want to do what I call future-proofing their storage. When you put it in S3, you know that you can pull it out of S3 through any type of application in the future. It can be containers, it can be a serverless function, it can be applications running on an instance, but you don't have to go back in and re-architect your data in order to be able to access it from your different types of applications. And by setting up that infrastructure where you're not just right back in some schema change, data migration cycle, you just open up this whole horizon of applications that you can build on that data, unlocking all the value for that data in a way you just couldn't do before. And it all starts with putting the data in S3. We have customers that put customer call recordings in S3, and they've been doing it for years. They started doing it because it was just cheap. Those are big files, and they had to put them somewhere, and they didn't want to buy all those hardware appliances to put them in a data center, spend all that money, and look after that housing of the actual data center. And so they started putting all their call center recordings in S3. And over time, their application developers got the smart idea, because, application developers out there are really, really smart. You give them the tools and you give them the data, they can do a lot of very interesting, important things for a business. And so you had application developers who said, we should do some learning on that data. And they built some ML models, and a lot of what they found in that customer call center data helped inform some of the fraud detection that was part of the business of those application developers. But that could have never happened without having this corpus of storage sitting there waiting to be unlocked.
Yeah, actually, so talking about that call center data, that's a really unique case, because if you had your own data center, you're limited to the amount of storage that you have available to you. So you can't keep all those call centers, and realizing that those are audio files that start to grow after time. Here, when they move them to S3, it's unlimited. You have that availability, and utilizing some of AWS services, doing machine learning on it. I'm learning about that stuff now, so that's very unique in what you can do. And
it's very interesting. And what the pattern that we're seeing emerge here, John, is that the shared data set in S3, maybe starts off in the tens of terabytes, and then, as you might imagine, it quickly grows. It can grow into the petabytes, tens of petabytes, sometimes exabytes. And because that data set grows separate from the application set, you can actually start to cost optimize within the data set by moving portions of that shared data set into Glacier or Deep Archive without impacting any of the applications using the data set. And so by that separation is really interesting, because it goes to the heart of the horizontal scaling that we do for distributed computing. It's being able to horizontally scale both your application plane and your data plane, and let that drive the business the way that you need to.
So you talked about it a little bit, and one of my questions is, do you believe that enterprises need to rethink their data architecture?
I think that every enterprise needs to rethink their data. And by data, I mean their sources of data and their mental model around their sources of data. So in the old legacy world, you would buy different hardware appliances, and you would kind of buy them for specific applications, right? And so, you maybe buy high performance storage appliance or something that was a little bit cheaper, and you kind of map them up to your application. And so what it ended up doing is basically creating these little data silos. And it was almost by design because you had to buy it for the application, right? And so enterprises have grown up and they have these data silos all over the place. And in some cases, they don't even know where their data silos are because there's so many of them and they're so scattered across data centers and across, in some cases, different countries. And so when enterprises are really looking for the agility that they have to set themselves up with, because it's just essential in today's world, especially today, they have to think to themselves, how do I change my mental model from all these isolated little data silos into a single shared data set? And whether you call it a data lake or any other nomenclature you want, there are more data lakes on S3 than anywhere else because we have the most experience of any other provider in managing and helping customers manage, tens of petabytes and up to exabytes of storage in that shared data set. And so that's the main shift that I think every enterprise has to do. It's get away from those data silos that are just slowing them down, and it's tying their compute and their storage, and they're sticking them together, and it's preventing either one of them from innovating very fast, and move to the shared data set model in S3 that helps unlock this horizon of applications that you can build on that shared data set.
So like we've talked about before in our other series and everything, the conversations that I'm having with you are bringing back some memories on how I've actually worked with and designed some of these, these applications to work with specific tier structure, they call them, within a data center, saying, oh, this is an important database. It needs to go over here because it's tied to this storage that is a performance based off of certain IOPS that are actually performing here. And just like you said, it actually resonates really well with me is that they were data silos. They were certain silos for certain applications. So, wow, these are bringing back some memories here.
I think too, the silos just block innovation. They just block innovation. I mean, when you have a data silo, you're not thinking about how that data can be used with other applications because it's totally in service to one single application. And, I'll just give you an example. There's a company called Dominos Pizza Enterprises, which is actually the largest Domino's franchise.
I might have heard of them.
Yeah. You might have ordered from them too. And one of the things that they have set as a goal is they set a goal of being able to have a pizza ready for pickup within 3 minutes of you calling it in, or ordering online, I should say. And and delivered within 10 minutes of you ordering online. And Domino's Pizza Enterprises sees about 70% of their orders are all taken online. And so if you look at that problem, you kind of squint at it and you go, okay, that's hard. They call it Project 310. And 3 minutes to go pick it up, 10 minutes to go deliver it. How do you do that? Obviously, there's technology involved in ovens and other things in the kitchen. But there has to be more than that. And so what they did is they used S3 to store a bunch of the transaction data, for example, for a particular franchise. And they built machine learning models on top of that data. And the machine learning models are basically predictive ordering. And it's predictive ordering by taking all of the volume of data, which, again, in the spirit of machine learning, can't be actually analyzed by a person, right? And it's using machine learning to come up with a predictive model that lets the store know which pizzas are most likely to be ordered at which periods of time, and if it's for pickup or for delivery. And they're in the process of rolling this out now. I think Australia is the first country in which they're rolling it out. And by their measurement, one of the stores that they rolled out this predictive ordering algorithm, they were averaging across the whole course of a week 5 minutes for delivery. 5 minutes. And that is incorporating sort of the power of machine learning. They don't make it until you order it, but then they get it to you within a matter of minutes because the person and the systems that are taking all the ordering, they already have that power of that predictive algorithm that has all the ingredients ready to go. You pop it in the oven, high-tech oven, it's out and it's on its way.
Okay, I'm envisioning some cool stuff here that pretty soon, if I order once a week on the same day, it's just going to show up at my house on that day, and I didn't even order it, and they're going to be like, all right, we already charged your card. Here you go. Here's your pizza, and we deliver it. Or I walk into the store, and there it is on the shelf with my name on it, because they predict, like, you've ordered it once a month on this day, and we just predicted today you would actually do that. So,
yeah, the Domino's franchise that use this technology, they actually have on the consoles, they use color coding to indicate which of the pizzas are more likely to be ordered at that given point.
Nice. Cool. That is that's very interesting how they're utilizing it. The ways that companies come up to utilize all the data that is out there and to make it better or a better customer experience is very interesting to me, and I'm just always blown away by some of the things they come up with. So that was a good example about that one and how they're utilizing it. I will keep this in mind the next time I order from Domino's.
It's all about the power of technology, bringing the pizza to you in a matter of minutes.
I
think,
is that they're going to be their slogan?
I like it. I think one of the interesting things about storage, too, is that it's not just an unlocker for all of these different new business applications. It's also flat out necessary. I think you and I talked about in our last session that explosion of data in the world. IDC says 40% growth of digital data every year. And so in some cases, it's not about unlocking that business opportunity that you want to differentiate yourself, like the Domino's Pizza enterprises. It's about just the sheer necessity. You just need your storage as your basis to do that.
You just jumped right in. You're reading my mind, and I'm jumped right into data explosion here. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about on the data explosion topic? Because I know that was one for you as we were talking before.
I think the old school legacy way to think about the growth of data is that it's a problem to be managed. And when you have a data center that runs out of space, I can kind of see why you would think about your storage as a problem to be managed. Because if it grows faster than you think, then you're scrambling to, find more hardware appliances or, maybe run out of space in your data center, which is a whole different problem. And if you delete too much of it, your application owners are not going to like it. You can see how people can evolve into that mindset when they're dealing with their own, data centers, and they're storing data in their own data centers. And so what's really been interesting in watching our customers over the last 6 months with COVID is how they are managing their data and the flexibility of cloud storage in managing your data. In some cases, you have customers like Netflix that almost overnight had these huge explosions of customers, because what are we all doing? We're watching some TV, right? Like, we're probably watching more TV than we watched before. For us, for example, in our house, we're actually watching a lot of Sherlock Holmes and Elementary. I have a kid who's really, really into murder mysteries and investigative, series. And it's been a real fun thing to sit down, a few times a week and watch a series and try to guess who did it together. And so, we're not alone. There's many households like ours. And so Netflix saw a real spike. And so for them, it was easy. They, basically they were using some block storage for some of their applications, and they increased petabytes overnight. And so that amount of flexibility is incredibly important when your demand goes up. But we have other customers who are in the food and hospitality business, and they wanted to delete some storage. And when they deleted that storage so that they could save monthly costs, they were able to do it overnight. And they were able to do it without giving up on sunk hardware costs, right? Because they didn't overbuy their hardware appliance. They just
That's a good
deleted
point.
storage,
Yep.
right? And so it's a different model, and it lets our customers be a lot more nimble about what does it mean to manage the necessary growth of data. Because the data is coming from all over. It's coming from tractors, right? For IoT sensors, it's coming from autonomous cars, it's coming from user behavior that's logged as part of transaction logs. It's coming from all over. And you're not going to slow down the data that runs your business, right? But you might need to reshape it. You might need to reform it. And the best way to do that is absolutely to do it in a pay-as-you-go model and not a sunk CapEx one.
So you mentioned it there with deleting your storage. In a traditional data center, your storage is there. You have it. So you can delete what you're using, but you're always going to pay for that storage that's sitting there in your data center idle versus deleting it in there. And the second thing they mentioned, I was one of those Netflix. My family was one of those. The kids were watching a lot of that. And we were probably part of those explosion for them. But we do actually, something that's came out of it is we do try to find a series. We'll sit down and watch a series, whether it's the kids and I, the family, or my wife and I will have our own little series, and it's the more or less the murder mystery. And I always like to go, that's the bad guy, there. So right there with you, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. And Netflix came through, flying colors.
You know what? 100%. Yeah, I did not have a single issue. I did not hear of anything. You didn't even notice anything. It worked.
Just scaled.
Are you looking at my Fire Stick? Because that is all mine on my Fire Stick. They're all the top ones on my. You sure?
I'm not looking at your Fire Stick, but I'm telling you that most of the major providers of streaming services they're using S3, and they're using S3 because they need to have that reliability, that scale up, scale down. They need to have, all the table stakes of storage around performance and durability and things like that. And it's just been fascinating to watch our customers just adapt and provide services no matter what to their customers.
100% agree there. And I just think it's amazing how you just mentioned all my top 3 that are on my Fire Stick, by the way. But all right, so I have one more question for you before we're going to round out this series. We do have one more series in this one, in the mini one before our live Q&A. And, the topic, and we touched on it just a little bit. You mentioned diverse workloads. What does that really mean for diverse workloads? We talked about it just a little bit, but I'd like to dive into it.
If there's an application out there, it's probably running on S3. And so, this whole gamut of, I mentioned autonomous cars. We have all kinds of analytics and, Hadoop type distributions. Basically, business analytics runs on S3. We have all types of machine learning running on S3. We have satellite imagery that gets put into S3 for analysis. You name it, we basically have some form of it. We have, in the media space, media is heavily using S3. Media uses S3 for both gold copy, which is basically the original assets, but they also use it for all the intermediate editing. They use it basically for anything they do for asset production, for movies, TV shows, catalogs of archives, heavily used for any type of media broadcasting and cataloging of media. In the government space, S3 gets used for a lot of smart government types of initiatives. So Southeast Asia, for example, a lot of the cities in Southeast Asia, like Singapore, have very strong smart city initiatives. And the smart city is everything from traffic control to pedestrian safety. And a lot of those images that are being pulled off of cameras for the stoplights are being put into S3 for analysis later. There's a crowdsourcing app that's actually done by the New York Transit Authority that uses S3, and it crowdsources safety for intersections to help identify which intersections are the least pedestrian safe, so they can add more protections around that, around turn signals, delayed lights for pedestrian walkways. S3 is at the heart of all of those applications. the major ride-sharing applications out there, the providers, whether it's Lyft or it's Uber or who have you, they're all using 𝗕_𝗏 for basically everything. Pinterest uses 𝗕_𝗏. And what's really interesting is that, I can do this whole laundry list of government agencies, which I actually can't name in my laundry list, to, startups that have just changed industries. And what's interesting is that a lot of the data that is in 𝗕_𝗏 is business data. It's the data that people use to make business decisions. A small percentage of Pinterest's data is actually the user pins. A lot of it is transaction logs and other things that help drive other parts of their business, like smart advertising. And so, I think that is a really interesting part of 𝗕_𝗏, which is how it's used as a data engine for how businesses in all of these different verticals make decisions. And, this started years ago, and it's really going to be a lot of the future of 𝗕_𝗏 as well, which is, how do people use 𝗕_𝗏 not just to store assets, right, but also to make the business decisions that just power where the mission is going for an individual customer.
That's a really good point. A lot of those everybody has probably used. I've used a number of those providers, those ride-sharing ones. So I'm just keeping track of our time. It looks like we're just about out of it. So I really enjoy talking to you. I know after our series, we're probably going to talk again because I'd like to do this again, if you don't mind. And before I end this, I'd like to actually do it on an action note. mai-lan, do you have anything to add before we end our second episode in this series?
Yeah, I think, for me, I think the most important thing for customers out there is that, agility is everything. Agility is everything. It's true right now. It's always been true, but it's really true right now. And the only way to have agility is to have data at your fingertips. And the only way to do that is to move to a cloud model where the data is there in that shared data set, because you don't want to get stuck in this whole cycle for how to move data around within data centers, create these data silos. The model today for customers that really want to stay agile, it's move to that shared data set. It's going to unlock the application that you're trying to get going right now, but it's also going to just set this whole architecture, this whole foundation that lets you build what you need in the future without any of that unnecessary data migration and transitioning that people just have to do on a daily basis in a data center. So that's the thing I want folks to really think about, is that, the decision you make today is not just smart, right, for what's going on today and the uncertainty of trying to predict demand and supply over the next, few months. It's also the way that you set yourself up for all the applications you want to build next.
Definitely unlock a lot of potential and remove those limitations. That's a really good point there. So mai-lan, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Have fun talking to you. We have another series going on. So mai-lan, before I end this on my finishing note here, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Happy to see you again, John. Looking forward to the next time we talk.
Yes, yes. Now, everyone, make sure that you click like, subscribe, hit those notifications buttons. We have our last talk here in the mini-series. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about modern architecture, modern data architecture a little bit. It seems to be a real big topic and one that mai-lan is passionate about. So also, don't forget, at the end of that one, when we release it, we're going to do a live Q&A session. So please feel free to make some notes, comment in the section below, and we will try to take those questions live. So I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you next time. mai-lan, I'll see you on our next series.
See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.